This movie was fantastic. It was fantastically filmed. It was fabulously filmed. Every shot is so coordinated and just flawlessly executed. The soundtrack is amazing, especially if you like blues music. There's a plane going overhead. Especially if you like blues music. I mean, it just so brilliantly accentuates the drama happening in the story, and that's where I think a lot of the film happens, is in the drama, right? And so it's sold kind of like a vampire flick, but we don't get a lot of vampires. I mean, there's a few vampires. My biggest problem with the film, my only problem with the film, is that it doesn't spend enough time killing vampires, right? We're led to believe this is a film about people killing vampires, right? Vampires trying to kill people and people killing the vampires and winning, or who are not winning, right? We're not sure how it's going to end. If you've ever seen From Dusk Till Dawn, this has been compared to that a lot. I certainly see the similarities, but From Dusk Till Dawn, and there's even like homages, like you see the sun setting when the first vampire comes running into the film, but that's already like over halfway into the film, and I think and it doesn't really even have that much of an effect until the third act. I think this film would have benefited a lot from having kind of like a midway point, similar to what we have in Scream, right? So the whole beginning of Scream is we get a couple murders in the town, you know, we know something's going on, we're building up the drama, we're storytelling, we're world building, but at that halfway mark is when the party starts, and we know as an audience that the entire rest of the film is going to occur in this party, in this house. We can tell whoever's going to make it out of this house or not, you know, right when the sun comes up, that's the end of it, right? We've seen Halloween, we've seen, you know, the Friday the 13th franchise. We just know we can tell that's how it's going to go, and that's exactly how it goes. And excuse me, there's another plane. I think this film would have benefited much more from that. Once the sun went down, I was like, oh, these vampires are coming. And then they kind of just like, the party starts, they kind of come over, you know, the vampires come over, they kind of hang out a little bit. They're, you know, they're creepy, they're looking around, they're playing their music. And then we're just still getting more drama. We're getting dance scenes, again, brilliantly executed, fabulously executed. Certainly eye candy, you know, it's just like, it's eye candy, right? For the screen, on the screen, you're just enthralled by everything you're watching. It is very visually entertaining, and they did a beautiful job with almost every shot in the film. Really is really, there's care taken. But again, like once the vampires finally breach the, you know, the bar that this is the opening night of, there's very little that happens, and what happens is entertaining, but I was expecting like this long, you know, standoff between the humans and the vampires, and it just doesn't really happen that way. It's almost as if the vampires were an afterthought. I think this film may have even been better if the KKK or some kind of like, you know, other like white supremacists or racists in the town were the ones attacking this party. I think that would have grounded it in a lot, you know, obviously in reality, but it just would have made it's almost even scarier, I think, because you realize these people have no, like vampires, you're not so scared of running into a vampire on a daily basis, but you are scared, especially in today's age, of running into somebody who doesn't agree with your, you know, who you are, or doesn't want you around, and that's terrifying. And I think that was probably the scariest part of this film, despite the vampires. So I think if they would have really that's an American story, that's a true story that's happened. So many people have been killed by white supremacist groups, and I think if they would have really played into the fear and drama and horror of that, it would have been a little bit more effective. Again, because like I said, I was just more afraid of them than I was the vampires, and we don't get a lot of, you know, like KKK representation in this film, or like white supremacy, but there is some, and yeah, I just think there's something so much more. I get that's not the story they were trying to tell here, but it's the fabric of the story. It's the context, it's the setting. It's so deeply ingrained in it that the vampires just kind of feel like the separate, and they're almost random. And I was just so much more invested in the world building of these two brothers opening this bar, recruiting everyone in their lives to help them, and all of that was, you know, so enthralled. You were in it. You were in it with them. And then kind of once things started, the horror started happening, you were like, wait, I kind of want to go back to that story. That I was having more fun over there. But yeah, like, but I'm ready for the vampires, you know. I think if we would have had more vampires, more death in the second half of the film, it would have helped balance that, because your expectations, you just were so invested with these characters and their storylines that didn't really end up mattering at all. They didn't really come into play with their deaths, or you know, so it was kind of like they just randomly die from vampires. That having been said, it is, for a horror film or non-horror film, but especially for a horror film, it is beautiful to look at. It's beautiful to listen to. It's entertaining from start to finish. So, I mean, what really more could you ask for, right? I'm a stickler for a plot. I'm here for, you know, the writing. That's what brings me to a film first and foremost. So that was part, and the writing here was good, but I think just the plot overall and the pacing were the biggest issue here. But again, brilliantly, beautifully shot, and it's a great time at the movies. So hope you all enjoy. It seems like a lot of people are enjoying this film. I have heard similar, excuse me, there's another plane. I have heard similar thoughts to the ones that I have, but again, it's hard to hold that against this film when it's so much better than a lot of what we've seen in the past 10 years, I would say, maybe even 20, when it comes to horror filmmaking and cinematography. Anyway, that's my take on it. Hope you all enjoy your night. Hope you enjoyed Sinners, and let me know what you think in the comments. It's Final Boy Connor here, formerly known as Evil Connor. I'll see you guys around. Good luck out there.